What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it looks like the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition continues to heat up with the FTC getting involved, but many online are now calling out the FTC for lying as part of their argument against it, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Nintendo and what else but copyright strikes, as they like to typically do online for things they don't necessarily like. This case, though, seems to have caused a bit more noise maybe than Nintendo was expecting. And we'll also be talking about Sony and Horizon Forbidden West with the latest downloadable content that isn't going to the PlayStation 4. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're gonna start today with Hideo Kojima and his latest announcement, that being Death Stranding 2, because he did answer some questions after he revealed it, and one was kind of interesting because it does lean into the idea that Kojima has actually predicted the future a couple of times now with some of his titles, which we can see this over on IGN. Quoting Kojima saying, "I had the story written before the pandemic, but after experiencing the pandemic, I rewrote the whole thing from scratch. I also didn't want to predict any more future, so I rewrote it." Now, if you look at something like Metal Gear Solid 2, especially some of the late game dialogue that takes place over codec, yeah, it's kind of eerie how much it predicted really things that took place, especially as we went towards like the social media era. But if you look at Death Stranding, it's pretty obvious with the pandemic and people basically spending time away from each other and communicating through technology. When you're running around to Death Stranding trying to reconnect everyone, you just deal with essentially phone calls from them. So I'm curious what that original script was for Death Stranding 2, because you see the latest trailer and it almost sounds like, oh, we made a mistake connecting everyone. Are they gonna now go around disconnecting everyone? And I'm definitely curious as to what we're gonna see here with Death Stranding 2. Also, one game that did catch my interest during the Game Awards was Crime Boss, and I wasn't originally sure exactly what this was, other than all the different actors that were in the game and were definitely spotlighted throughout that trailer. But we did get 6 minutes of just gameplay as they went through a mission, and we can see some of this here posted up by GameSpot. It appears to be kind of a Payday-like game. It's a little odd though, because they talk about stealth and no one's wearing masks or anything, which was a key component in Payday. To me, I'm a little concerned that maybe they definitely went all in on the likenesses and the actors first and foremost, and the gameplay and the game itself was kind of secondary. There are some aspects that look fun, but look maybe lower quality. It's weird because stealth mission, no mask, you have a helicopter coming in through the roof and stuff. I'll see more about this one because this is just 6 minutes of gameplay, but I did enjoy Payday, specifically Payday 2. So if this can kind of mimic that a bit, just maybe a slightly different take on it, I could probably at least have some fun with it. Oh, and we did see more reveals for Street Fighter 6 at the Game Awards, along with the official cover art, which didn't go over so well online. And you can see it here. What's really funny is on Reddit, it leaked early. It got posted up. People were like, that can't be real. That's not the cover art. That doesn't make any sense. And then people had to go back and edit and say, oh wait, no, it was real. So a lot of backlash online saying it has to be the worst box art, which if you look back at some of the Street Fighter box arts, they were fine. I thought like Street Fighter 4 was all right, Street Fighter 5, sure. And maybe this just sticks out like a sore thumb. And a lot of people are pointing to Luke being the one character with a very weird expression, and the rest of the box art just looks empty. Some are calling for them to redo it completely. I don't think Capcom will. Maybe they'll come up with alternate cover arts. Maybe we'll get lucky and there's a reverse cover art in the whole thing. It just certainly looks like an odd decision to go with that for the front of your game. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the FTC moving to block the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition. It was big news last week, and part of that announcement came with an entire lawsuit. It's pages and pages of legal speak. But their arguments are there typed out for the world to see. And as people were going through it, they noticed a few things here that were a bit off. The biggest one has to do with Microsoft and sort of promises that were made when it came to the ZeniMax Bethesda deal that, for the most part, went off without a hitch. There really wasn't any issues or pushback anywhere around the world, and it just kind of went through. This one a bit different. It's about $70 billion. So obviously it's taking up a lot of focus all around the world. But we can see this posted up over on Pure Xbox. They did a very good job summarizing all of this as well as the update itself. But this from the FTC, Microsoft decided to make several of Bethesda titles, including Starfield and Redfall, Microsoft exclusives, despite assurances it had given to European antitrust authorities that it had no incentive to withhold games from rival consoles. And not too long after this was posted, the European Commission responded to MLEX, and it's behind a paywall, but it was transcribed and posted on Recent Era, where the European Commission, the EU, said Microsoft didn't make any commitments to EU regulators not to release Xbox exclusive content following its takeover of ZeniMax Media, the European Commission said. In fact, Microsoft mostly said it's going to be a case-by-case basis going forward, and for the most part, if you look at games that were already on PlayStation, they just kind of left them alone. I know there were rumors that Starfield was maybe going to be lined up as a PlayStation exclusive at one point, similar to Deathloop and Ghostwire, where it's timed, but we didn't have any concrete evidence and release of information backing that. However, the most recent update has Stephen Totilo chiming in here, talking with some of the regulators, saying, what did the FTC say again yesterday? Not that Microsoft broke a promise to keep ZeniMax games exclusive, but that Microsoft gave assurances that it didn't have an incentive to withhold ZeniMax games from rival platforms. Going on to say, by my reading, none of these statements contradict each other. EU is saying it didn't base its ZeniMax call on Microsoft pledges, didn't get Microsoft pledges, just didn't think those games going exclusive would be big enough. Doesn't tell us if they feel that about Call of Duty. FTC is saying that if Microsoft told the EU it didn't need to go exclusive with ZeniMax games but did, then perhaps it'll do the same again with COD. As for Microsoft, it has told UK regulators that it makes sense for a Starfield to go exclusive and for a COD not to. So just based on a lot of the wording, it technically, as Steven mentions here, it doesn't conflict with each other, and a lot of this does come down to legal speak and kind of skirting that gray area as opposed to like, oh, they absolutely promised this or that. And this is sort of how it's going to be going forward, as Microsoft will argue back and forth with the FTC. And a lot of people are looking at this now and realizing the FTC's case doesn't feel that strong necessarily, and it's mostly being left up to them working to set an example because of how large this acquisition is and how tech is. A lot of big tech companies have been working to buy up more and more companies and consolidate. Maybe them posturing and showing a strong front that we're not going to just hang out and let people just buy up all these companies outright with no resistance. And I do think, looking at this more and more as we've gone along, that it'll probably still go through for Microsoft, but I'll admit it might take longer than even they were expecting with that June 2023 deadline maybe being extended going forward. But technically, no. Based on the legal speak that is there in those documents, the FTC didn't really lie. They just worked to try to paint this picture that Microsoft, well, they were at least alluding to the fact that Starfield would be going to PlayStation because it needed to, but not really. COD, however, maybe a different story because of its long-established history of being pretty large on PlayStation, but also the development time, budget, and the fact that they shoot for yearly releases. They got to put that thing everywhere they can, and that's probably one of the reasons Microsoft went out very quickly and started signing 10-year deals with companies like Nintendo. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo moving to copyright strike and pull down a video from Did You Know Gaming. We can see this posted up over on Nintendo Life, who documented the entire situation, where they say popular YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming receives copyright strike for Heroes of Hyrule video, which we actually talked about this in a previous news wave because it was so interesting to see some insight as to what Retro Studios does. Like that's the biggest thing, because it kind of appears from the outside that it's not much, especially recently. At least now they're working on Metroid Prime 4. But we can see this posted up by Did You Know Gaming over on Twitter, simply saying, let Nintendo of America know what you think. Following up in the picture that was posted saying, Nintendo has removed our Heroes of Hyrule video from YouTube. This was a journalistic video documenting a game that Retro Studios pitched to Nintendo nearly 20 years ago. This is an attempt by a large corporation to silence whatever journalism they don't like, and a slap in the face for video game history preservation. We are exploring all available options to restore the video. Now, the game that's being referred to here that's seemed to spur Nintendo to do this was Heroes of Hyrule, which was a pitch that was in the end turned down by Nintendo from Retro Studios, where they would have the Legend of Zelda intellectual property and try to build their own tactical-based strategy game around it. It's interesting stuff to think about. Oh, Retro Studios was going to leverage the Legend of Zelda property for their own game. And I did check in with some of the people there at Did You Know Gaming about the documents that were used in the video, because I had a feeling that Nintendo, being Nintendo, trying to figure out all the different ways they can legally take this stuff down, and just checking with them, the documents and stuff that were used in the video weren't under NDA. They weren't obtained under like malicious means, and it wasn't part of that Giga Leak. This is all stuff they sourced as you would expect journalists to do, and to me, it's completely fine to use. But Nintendo being Nintendo, remember, at one point, they were about claiming gameplay of their game that people would record and enjoy and post up on YouTube. And we've seen Nintendo do some weird things before when it comes to copyright striking, which, for example, Nintendo Power. We talked about how that was all posted up on archive. Yeah, it's gone now. And before they had taken this stuff down, so a lot of people are assuming Nintendo once again did this. And what I can assume is that they look around at these videos and these leaks and different things and go, that's our intellectual property. We don't want it there. We're going to copyright strike this and, yes, take advantage of, well, what's a busted up YouTube system. And to me, it's just kind of a waste of time for Nintendo in the first place. Not that Did You Know Gaming isn't doing good work. They are, and they've continued, by the way, to cover more projects that Nintendo's probably not too happy about them covering. But, like, you feel like Nintendo has other things to do rather than just browse around YouTube and strike down different videos on projects from 20 years ago. If this was on a website, Nintendo probably wouldn't have done much at all about it. And that's why I'm hoping that if Did You Know Gaming can really counter the claim in any way, that Nintendo just release it and move on, because the tweet got 50 some odd thousand likes, retweeted all over the place, covered by many publications. It's not really something I think Nintendo was expecting to get out of control to this degree. But Nintendo being Nintendo, they like to skirt that gray area, and maybe they'll just leave it there and go, hey, you know what? You can meet us in court. Nintendo probably has no problem, because they are very petty, I will tell you this, to waste hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially defending this in court. And at that point, it's probably not worth it. And it's a shame, because to me, it was just a well done video within the rights, I would say, of just journalism that Nintendo is ripping down because they just don't like it. So I'll be curious to see what happens here. Hopefully Nintendo just releases the copyright strike, moves on in the video and go back up, because it's interesting to see what goes on in the video game world, especially at Retro Studios, when we're just waiting them to do something. Well, we can see what kind of pitch they had way back in the day with The Legend of Zelda as a tactics game. Next up, let's talk about Horizon Forbidden West and the latest downloadable content that was revealed at the Game Awards. We can see this that was posted up over on Guerrilla's website, where they say Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores is coming to PlayStation 5 consoles on April 19th, 2023. That's right, it's not going to the PlayStation 4, and they sort of explain this here as to why that's the case. Our creative vision for the Burning Shores is an ambitious expansion which will take Aloy to the ruins of Los Angeles. It's an overgrown and fractured city that can be fully explored via the water and flying on the back of a Sunwing. A massive machine threat lurks in the shadows, a huge challenge that Aloy must overcome by using all of her skills and abilities. To achieve this grand vision technically and creatively, we've made the difficult decision to focus all our efforts on making an incredible experience exclusively for the PlayStation 5 console. Now, for me, since I played Horizon Forbidden West on the PlayStation 5, doesn't really bother me much. I'll pick it up on the PS5 because I enjoyed Forbidden West, and I think Burning Shores could be really cool based on what they're describing here, and I'll play it when it drops in April. But I can understand people are looking at this who bought it on the PS4 and they're like, well, hold on, what? You're not releasing the downloadable content for a cross-generation game? It just, to me, continues to lean into the fact that Sony seemed kind of unsure as to what to do here, going from the PS4 to the PS5 with all this cross-gen development. And yeah, a lot of that has to do with them just being unable to create PlayStation 5s at the start of this generation, being a very unique situation, but now ready to kick the PS4 to the curb and move along to the PS5 after things get underway. Again, though, if this is indeed developed, as they're saying, specifically for the PS5, and it's just not possible in the PS4, then, well, I mean, I guess we'll see Digital Foundry will tear into that one. But it's, again, a very odd thing here. I guess the one good part is if you are moving to the PS5, there's just a free upgrade path for Horizon Forbidden West as it is, because once again, they got called out for confusion on their side and attempting to charge $10 difference on Horizon Forbidden West when they originally said it would just be a free upgrade. So yeah, Sony all over the place, kind of scatterbrained to start the generation. Now they seem fully focused on the PS5 going into 2023, starting with downloadable content on Horizon Forbidden West. And in our last bit of news, let's quickly talk about the NPD sales results for the month of November. Let's head over here and take a look at the top 10 when it comes to games. Starting with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, no surprise that it's number one still. Remember, it came out right at the end of October, so this is really the first full month of sales for it. Then we have God of War Ragnarok at number 2, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they're counted together, and that does not count digital sales. These are just physical sales. Curious where it would be if the digital sales were included. Hey, Sonic Frontiers, though, at number 4. Shout out to Sonic and Sega getting up there in the top 5. Then we have Madden NFL 23 at 5, FIFA 23, NBA 2K23, once again, not counting digital copies there, Gotham Knights, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, and then, interestingly enough, Mario Party Superstars rounds out the top 10 with just physical copies. Now, if we take a look here at the dollar sales in millions, interestingly enough, the video game hardware up 45% from November of last year, and a lot of that is attributed to the PlayStation 5 being significantly more available. In fact, it was the best-selling console when it comes to units and dollar sales, working to drive the overall revenue up to nearly $1.3 billion. And I kind of think this is going to be the trend going forward with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series just becoming easy to find now going into 2023, which is good. It just took a while to get here. It took 2 years to get to the point where you might walk into a store and see one of these consoles. It's a very unique situation that we went through to start the generation, but I think now is when things get moving along. And that includes for Microsoft in 2023 getting some of these big first-party AAA games out there, and Sony continuing along, getting the PS5 out to the masses. And it's interesting because the Switch was the second for the NPD despite having Pokemon, and I thought that would have driven the Switch up to the first spot for November, but just having PlayStation 5s available along with a good game like God of War Ragnarok and obviously Call of Duty was enough to push the PS5 up to the top spot. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, how do you feel about the Microsoft Activision acquisition that is currently pending? 45% say I want it to go through so that Microsoft owns Activision Blizzard. 36% say I don't care either way, I just want it to wrap up already. Then 19% say I don't want it to go through and Activision remains independent. I'm kind of falling in line with I don't care either way, I just want it to wrap up already. But I can understand, I've seen the opinion that, okay, if this deal goes through, Microsoft owning Activision Blizzard should just be better all the way around. With all these Activision Blizzard games will go into Game Pass, which makes that subscription just a better value. And most likely, Bobby Kotick would go away, sure, with hundreds of millions of dollars, but that's kind of the belief now, is that Activision Blizzard becoming part of the Microsoft family would just be better for the company overall. But I guess we'll see about that one whenever this decides to end. And at this point, I'm thinking we might find ourselves in 2024 still talking about the acquisition. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Ian saying, it was refreshing going into the Game Awards with lowered expectations about Nintendo's presence at the show. However, it did feel a bit odd Microsoft didn't have more of a presence last night. I talked about this on Saturday, just the overall disappointment, especially from a lot of Xbox fans, that Microsoft was nowhere to be found when it came to reveals at the Game Awards, going into a year where they're hyping it up. Once again, yes, but they're hyping it up as when things really get moving for Xbox. I believe that'll still be the case for 2023. I mean, Starfield and Redfall and Forza are all lined up to come out. But yeah, very odd. The only thing I can think of, and that is now, by the way, a rumor that's going around with Windows Central kind of pointing this out, they will have some kind of showcase to kick off 2023. EXO, maybe something like that, and Inside Xbox. I would like to see them just start a brand new show that has no expectations necessarily behind it for when it should air, yearly, monthly, nothing like that. and push forward with that as their big, all right, we're starting fresh. 2023 is when we really get moving with this generation, and we have all these studios. Games are coming out now. Let's do a presentation like a Nintendo Direct or a State of Play, and they don't have to rely on events like the Game Awards at all. But I guess we'll see as we work into 2023 if Microsoft really has a big event planned, maybe sometime in January. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's Microsoft versus the FTC? Do you think the FTC has a good case at all here going up against Microsoft with this acquisition? And then also, what about Sony and the Horizon Burning Shores DLC being specific for the PlayStation 5 and Nintendo striking down Did You Know Gaming's video? Are you frustrated with the way Nintendo handles some of this stuff? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.